Most people quit, not because the path was impossible, but because they convinced themselves it was. They wake up each morning with that familiar weight pressing against their chest, that quiet voice whispering that maybe they were never meant for this, maybe this dream was always too big, maybe they should have been more realistic from the start. And somewhere between the exhaustion of trying and the comfort of giving up, they make a decision that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They stop, not because they failed, but because they were tired of not knowing if they would succeed. I have watched this pattern repeat itself thousands of times across every culture, every generation, every walk of life. The tragedy is never the difficulty of the journey. The tragedy is how close most people are to breakthrough when they choose to turn back. You need to understand something fundamental about human nature. We are not wired to see our own progress. We are wired to see our immediate discomfort. When you are climbing a mountain, you cannot see the summit from the middle of the trail. All you can see is the next difficult step, the next painful breath, the next moment of doubt. Your mind, in its desperate attempt to protect you from suffering, begins constructing elaborate justifications for why you should stop. It tells you this is too hard. It tells you that you are not good enough. It tells you that the people who succeed are different, special, chosen in some way that you are not. And because these thoughts come from inside your own head, you believe them. You mistake the voice of fear for the voice of wisdom. You mistake the exhaustion of growth for evidence of impossibility. I spent years of my life studying why people fail, and I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about success. The moment of quitting almost never comes during the actual crisis. It comes in the quiet hours afterward, when you are alone with your thoughts, when the adrenaline has faded, and all that remains is the cumulative weight of every previous disappointment. That is when the real battle happens. Not against the external obstacle, but against the story you are telling yourself about what that obstacle means. Most people lose this battle not because they lack strength, but because they lack clarity. They cannot see that the voice telling them to quit is not reporting reality. It is protecting them from the possibility of trying and still failing. It is offering them the cold comfort of certainty over the terrifying potential of hope. I learned this the hard way. There was a period in my life when I was so close to everything I had worked for, and I could not see it. I was speaking to small crowds, writing articles that few people read, pouring my heart into work that seemed to vanish into the void. Every day felt like evidence that I was fooling myself. Every morning I woke up with the same question: what if this never works? What if I am wasting the best years of my life chasing something that was never real? The pain was not in the work itself. The pain was in not knowing if the work mattered. And I came within hours, within single decisions, of walking away from everything, not because I had failed, but because I was tired of not knowing if I would succeed. What saved me was a realization so simple that it felt almost insulting when it first appeared. I was sitting in a cheap hotel room after another disappointing event, staring at the ceiling, and the thought arrived fully formed. You are not quitting because this is impossible. You are quitting because you are uncomfortable. The distinction matters more than anything else in human achievement. Impossible means there is no path forward. Uncomfortable means you have not yet adapted to the path you are on. I was not facing an insurmountable obstacle. I was facing the accumulated discomfort of sustained effort without immediate reward. And the moment I saw that clearly, everything changed. Not because the circumstances changed, but because my relationship to those circumstances changed. Here is what most people never realize about the moment before breakthrough. It feels identical to the moment before failure. There is no dramatic sign, no cosmic reassurance, no proof that you are close. You are simply in the desert of effort, where every day looks the same as the last, where progress is invisible and faith is the only currency that matters. This is where character is built or broken. This is where you discover whether you are someone who needs to see the destination before taking the next step, or someone who can walk forward because the direction matters more than the distance. The people who succeed are not more talented, more lucky, or more connected. They are more willing to tolerate the specific discomfort of not knowing when the work will pay off. Society teaches you the wrong lessons about perseverance. It shows you the finished stories, the highlights, the moments of triumph, and tells you that success is linear. You are shown the author with the bestseller, not the years of rejection letters. You are shown the entrepreneur with the thriving business, not the months of sleeping in the office. You are shown the artist with the gallery opening, not the decades of work nobody wanted. And because you only see the outcome, you develop a fantasy about what achievement should feel like. You imagine that successful people are always confident, always certain, always moving forward with clear momentum. So when your own journey feels messy, uncertain, and exhausting, you assume you are doing something wrong. You assume this is evidence that you are not meant for this path. But the truth is darker and more liberating than that. Everyone who has ever achieved something meaningful has stood exactly where you are standing now, tired, uncertain, wondering if they should quit. The difference is not that they felt more confident. The difference is that they decided confidence was not required to take the next step. They understood that clarity comes from action, not the other way around. You do not wait until you feel ready to move forward. You move forward, and readiness develops in the process. This is the secret that separates those who build lives of meaning from those who spend their lives preparing to build lives of meaning. I want you to think about something specific right now. Think about the thing you are closest to quitting, not the thing you have already quit, the thing you are still holding on to by your fingertips, the thing that exhausts you every time you think about it, the thing that makes you wonder if you are being stubborn or being brave. That thing, whatever it is probably closer to breakthrough than you realize. Not because I can see your specific circumstances, but because I understand the pattern. The moment you most want to quit is almost always the moment just before the shift. Not because the universe is testing you, but because meaningful change requires you to become a different person than you were when you started, and that transformation is painful. You are not tired because you are failing. You are tired because you are changing. The enemy is not difficulty. The enemy is distraction disguised as reason. Your mind will offer you 1,000 logical explanations for why quitting makes sense. It will tell you that you are being practical, that you are protecting yourself, that you are making a mature decision. But underneath every one of those justifications is the same core fear. What if I keep trying and it still does not work? What if I give everything I have and it is not enough? That fear is valid. That fear is human. But that fear is also a liar, because the real question is not what happens if you keep trying and fail. The real question is what happens if you quit right now and spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you had just lasted one more week, one more month, one more season. I have met hundreds of people who quit on their dreams, and I have never, not once, met someone who regretted persisting too long. I have met countless people who regret giving up too soon. They carry it like a scar that never fully heals. They tell themselves they made the right choice. They rationalize it. They build entire philosophies around why quitting was wise. But in their quietest moments, when they are honest with themselves, they know the truth. They were close. They were so close. And they let fear make the decision for them. You are one step away from what you have always wanted. Not because I can see your future, but because this is how proximity to breakthrough always feels. It feels like you have been walking forever and gotten nowhere. It feels like the gap between where you are and where you want to be is growing instead of shrinking. It feels like evidence is mounting against you, and faith is the only thing left to stand on. This is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. This is a sign that you are in the transformation zone, the place where comfortable people become capable people, where dreamers become doers, where potential becomes reality. But here is the part that no one tells you. The breakthrough does not happen because you suddenly discover some hidden strength. The breakthrough happens because you make a simple decision to take the next obvious step despite not wanting to. That is it. That is the entire mechanism. You wake up tired and do the work anyway. You feel uncertain and move forward anyway. You question everything and persist anyway. Not because you are special, but because you have decided that the discomfort of persisting is more acceptable than the regret of quitting. Every single person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has made that decision. Usually multiple times, usually in moments where it felt impossible. The path forward is not about motivation. Motivation is a fleeting emotion that abandons you precisely when you need it most. The path forward is about identity. You have to decide who you are. Are you someone who quits when things get hard, or someone who continues because the direction matters more than the difficulty? That decision, that fundamental choice about your own character, determines everything else. And here is the strange truth. Once you make that decision clearly, once you commit to your own identity as someone who persists, the external circumstances become almost irrelevant. You stop needing proof that it will work. You stop needing reassurance from others. You stop needing to feel confident. You just do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because that is who you are. Most people are waiting for a sign to continue. They want some external validation that they are on the right track, some indication that their effort is not wasted. But that sign almost never comes when you need it. The sign comes after you have already pushed through, after you have already made the decision to persist, after you have already become the person who does not need a sign. This is the cruel mathematics of achievement. The proof arrives after the faith, not before. The confidence develops after the action, not before. The breakthrough manifests after you have already decided to continue, regardless of whether breakthrough comes. I want to tell you something I learned too late in my own journey. The people who quit are not weak. They are often the most intelligent, most sensitive, most aware individuals. They can see all the reasons why something might not work. They can calculate the odds. They can feel the pain of sustained effort. Their problem is not stupidity. Their problem is that they value certainty over growth. They need to know the outcome before committing to the process. But life does not work that way. Life rewards those who can tolerate uncertainty, who can persist through the fog, who can take the next step without seeing the full staircase. You have already invested so much: time, energy, hope, pieces of your soul. Walking away now does not recover those investments. It just ensures they were wasted. The sunk cost fallacy tells you not to throw good money after bad, but there is a deeper truth. Sometimes you are not throwing good money after bad. You are just close enough to success that it still looks like failure. The difference between those two scenarios is almost impossible to distinguish from the inside, which is exactly why you need to default to persistence, not because it guarantees success, but because it is the only way to find out if success was possible. There is a specific type of pain that comes from quitting, and it is worse than any pain that comes from trying. The pain of trying is sharp and immediate. You feel it in your body, your schedule, your daily struggle, but it has dignity. It has purpose. It moves you somewhere, even if you cannot see where. The pain of quitting is dull and permanent. It lives in your chest like a weight you can never fully put down. It shows up in random moments, in the space between distraction and sleep, in the stories you tell yourself about who you could have been. It turns into bitterness if you are not careful, into a cynicism that protects you from hoping again but also prevents you from living fully. I am not telling you that everything works out if you just persist. That would be a lie, and you deserve better than lies. Some things do fail. Some dreams are genuinely impossible. Some paths do lead nowhere. But here is what I know for certain. You cannot know which category your situation falls into until you have given it everything you have. Not everything you think you have. Everything you actually have. Most people quit at 70%, maybe 80%. If they are unusually committed, they tell themselves they gave it everything, but they know deep in the place they do not look at too closely that they held something back. They hedged. They kept one foot in the escape route. And that small reservation, that tiny lack of full commitment, is often the exact amount of effort that separated them from breakthrough. The transformation you are going through right now, this exhausting, uncertain, faith-testing process, is the actual work. You think the work is the external task, the business, the project, the goal. But that is just the vehicle. The real work is becoming the kind of person who can sustain effort without immediate reward, who can tolerate uncertainty without collapsing into fear, who can look at evidence of difficulty and see it as information rather than verdict. That transformation is painful, because you are literally rewiring your nervous system, rewriting your mental defaults, rebuilding your relationship to discomfort. Of course, it feels impossible. It is supposed to. That is how growth works. Think about every person you admire, every author, entrepreneur, artist, leader, innovator who created something that mattered. None of them felt ready. None of them had certainty. None of them were free from doubt. But they all shared one characteristic. They continued anyway, not because they were braver, but because they decided that the possibility of regret was more frightening than the guarantee of discomfort. They chose the known pain of effort over the unknown pain of wondering what could have been. And that choice, repeated day after day in small, unremarkable moments, accumulated into extraordinary results. You are standing at a crossroads right now, even if it does not feel dramatic. One path leads to comfort and regret. The other leads to continued struggle and potential breakthrough. Neither path is easy, but only one of them gives you a chance at the thing you actually want. Only one of them lets you look back at your life without wondering. Only one of them allows you to become the fullest version of yourself. Here is what I need you to understand. The next step is not as hard as your mind is making it seem. Your mind is extrapolating your current fatigue across an infinite future and telling you that you will feel this tired forever. But that is not how it works. You will not feel this tired forever. You will adapt. You will grow stronger. You will develop capacities you do not currently have. The person who takes the next step is not the same person who will be taking steps 6 months from now. You are not committing to feel this way indefinitely. You are only committing to take one more step. That is all. Just one. And if after that step you still want to quit, you can. I am not asking you to make a permanent decision right now. I am asking you to defer the decision to quit until after you take the next obvious action. Do the work today, have the conversation tomorrow, send the email next week. And then, after you have done that, if you still genuinely want to walk away, then walk away. But make the decision from a place of action, not from a place of exhaustion. Make it from a place of clarity, not from a place of fear. Most people who quit do so in their weakest moments. They make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. They let the voice of exhaustion speak for their entire future. But exhaustion is just a feeling, and feelings change. What you feel today will not be what you feel next month. The circumstances that seem insurmountable right now will look different after rest, after perspective, after one small win. Do not let the worst version of yourself make decisions for the best version of yourself. I have been where you are. Not in your exact circumstances, but in that internal place where continuing feels impossible and quitting feels inevitable. And I can tell you from the other side of that moment, the person who walks through the fire comes out different. Not unburned, but strengthened. Not without scars, but with character. Not unchanged, but transformed into someone capable of things their former self could never imagine. That transformation is available to you, but only if you continue. Only if you choose, right now, to take one more step into the discomfort. The world is full of people who almost made it. People who were talented enough, smart enough, capable enough, but who quit one day too soon, 1 week too early, 1 month before the breakthrough. They are not remembered. They do not get credit for trying hard. They become statistics in someone else's motivational speech about perseverance. I do not want that for you. Not because I need you to succeed for my sake, but because you need you to succeed for your own. You need to know what you are capable of when you refuse to quit. You need to see what happens when you commit fully, when you burn the escape routes, when you decide that turning back is not an option. This is your moment. Not in some grand theatrical sense, but in the quiet, desperate sense where real change happens. Right now, in your exhaustion and doubt, you have the opportunity to make a decision that will define the trajectory of your entire life. You can choose to believe the story your fear is telling you, or you can choose to act despite that story. You can treat your discomfort as evidence of impossibility, or you can treat it as the growing pains of transformation. You can preserve your current identity as someone who tried, or you can forge a new identity as someone who persisted until they broke through. I cannot promise you that it will work. I cannot guarantee that your specific dream will manifest exactly as you imagine it. Life is more complex than simple formulas, and sometimes extraordinary effort leads to unexpected outcomes rather than predicted ones. But I can promise you this: you will never regret continuing. You may adjust your approach, you may modify your goals, you may end up somewhere different than you planned, but you will never lie awake at night wondering what would have happened if you had just tried a little longer. You will never carry the weight of abandoned potential. You will never have to live with the quiet knowledge that you quit on yourself when it mattered most. Let me tell you something about the nature of human potential that most people never grasp. Your capacity is not fixed. It is not determined by your past, your background, your education, or your circumstances. Your capacity expands in direct proportion to the demands you place on it. When you push yourself beyond what feels comfortable, beyond what feels possible, you do not just accomplish more, you become more. The struggle itself is what builds the strength. The uncertainty itself is what develops the wisdom. The exhaustion itself is what forges the resilience. You are not trying to reach a goal with your current level of capability. You are developing new capabilities through the process of reaching for the goal. This is why quitting is so devastating. It is not just that you fail to achieve the external objective. It is that you rob yourself of the internal transformation that would have occurred through the struggle. Every time you quit before the breakthrough, you stay the same person you were when you started. You do not grow. You do not evolve. You remain trapped in the limited version of yourself that doubted whether you could do it. And over time, as this pattern repeats, you build an identity around being someone who starts things but does not finish them. Someone who has potential but never actualizes it. Someone who dreams but does not deliver. I watched this happen to my own brother. He was brilliant, more naturally talented than I ever was. He could see possibilities that others missed. He could articulate visions that inspired people. But he quit, not once, but repeatedly. He quit when the music career got difficult. He quit when the business partnership became complicated. He quit when the writing project required more discipline than inspiration. And with each quit, he told himself a story about why it made sense. The industry was corrupt. His partner was unreliable. The market was not ready. But I saw what he could not see. He was not quitting because of external obstacles. He was quitting because he had never learned to tolerate the specific discomfort of sustained effort without immediate reward. He needed to see results quickly, or he lost faith in the process. And because most meaningful achievements require extended periods of invisible progress, he spent his entire life starting and stopping, accumulating potential but never converting it into reality. The last time I spoke with him, he was in his 50s, working a job he hated, talking about all the things he could have been. The tragedy was not that he lacked talent or opportunity. The tragedy was that he had trained himself to quit. It had become his default response to difficulty, and by that point in his life, he could not even see it anymore. He genuinely believed that the world had been against him, that circumstances had prevented him from succeeding, that other people were luckier or more connected. He could not accept the simple truth that he had quit on himself repeatedly, in small ways and large ways, until quitting became the defining characteristic of his life. I am telling you this not to depress you, but to wake you up. Because right now, in this moment, you are making the same choice he made. You are deciding whether to continue or to quit, and that decision will echo through the rest of your life in ways you cannot currently imagine. If you quit now, you will not just lose this particular goal. You will strengthen the neural pathway of quitting. You will make it more likely that you will quit the next time things get difficult, and the time after that, and the time after that, until one day you wake up and realize that you have spent your entire life avoiding the very discomfort that would have transformed you into someone extraordinary. But you also have another option. You can use this moment as the turning point. You can decide that regardless of what happens with this specific goal, you will not quit during the difficult part. You will persist through the uncertainty. You will tolerate the discomfort. You will become someone who finishes what they start, who commits fully, who does not need to see the destination before taking the journey. That decision, that fundamental reorientation of your character, is worth more than any external achievement. Because once you become that person, once you have proven to yourself that you can persist through difficulty, everything else becomes possible. Here is something I discovered after decades of working with people trying to change their lives. The actual tasks required for success are almost never as difficult as people imagine. Writing the book is hard, but it is not impossible. Building the business requires effort, but it is not beyond human capability. Developing the skill takes time, but the time passes anyway. The real difficulty is psychological. It is maintaining belief in yourself when you have no evidence. It is continuing to work when you cannot see results. It is tolerating the gap between where you are and where you want to be, without letting that gap destroy your motivation. This psychological game is where most people lose. They can handle the external challenges. They can learn new skills. They can put in long hours. They can sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term gain. But they cannot handle the internal experience of sustained uncertainty. They cannot tolerate not knowing if their effort will pay off. They need reassurance, validation, proof that they are on the right track. And when that proof does not come quickly enough, they interpret its absence as evidence that they should quit. But here is what you need to understand about proof. It always lags behind effort. You do not see the results of your work until long after you have done the work. The author does not get the book deal until after they have written the book. The entrepreneur does not get the customers until after they have built the product. The artist does not get recognition until after they have created the body of work. There is always a gap, sometimes a very long gap, between input and output. And in that gap you have to operate on faith alone. Not mystical faith, but practical faith. Faith that consistent effort over time will produce results, even when you cannot see those results yet. Most people cannot do this. They need immediate feedback. They need to see progress in real time. And because meaningful, achievements rarely work that way. They quit before the delayed results have time to manifest. They plant seeds and then dig them up every few days to check if they are growing. And then they wonder why nothing ever grows for them. You have to be different. You have to develop the capacity to work in the dark, to persist through the invisible stage, to continue when there is no evidence that continuation makes sense. This is not natural. This is not easy. This requires you to override every instinct your brain has developed to keep you safe and comfortable. But this is also the only path to creating anything meaningful. Everything that matters requires you to work longer than feels reasonable, to believe in yourself more than seems justified, to persist past the point where most people quit. I am asking you to do something difficult. I am asking you to continue when every fiber of your being wants to stop. I am asking you to take one more step when you are convinced you have no steps left. I am asking you to trust the process when the process has given you no reason to trust it. I understand how hard this is. I understand the weight you are carrying. I understand the doubt that wakes you up at 3 in the morning and tells you that you are fooling yourself. I understand all of it because I have lived all of it. But I also understand what happens when you push through. I understand the moment when the breakthrough finally comes, when all the invisible progress suddenly becomes visible, when the work you did in the dark finally sees the light. I understand the feeling of looking back at the moment you almost quit and realizing how close you were to losing everything. I understand the profound satisfaction of knowing that you did not give up on yourself, that you kept your commitment even when it was hard, that you became someone who finishes what they start. That feeling is available to you. That transformation is possible for you, but only if you do not quit now. Only if you take the next step, and the next step, and the next step, even when those steps feel pointless. Only if you decide that you will persist until you either break through or until you have genuinely exhausted every possible option, not just until you feel tired. There is a question you need to ask yourself, and you need to answer it honestly. When you look back at this moment 10 years from now, what do you want to see? Do you want to see someone who gave up because it was too hard? Or do you want to see someone who kept going because it mattered? Do you want to see someone who let fear make their decisions? Or do you want to see someone who felt the fear and moved forward anyway? Do you want to see the moment you quit? Or do you want to see the moment you decided that quitting was not an option? Your future self is watching you right now. They are waiting to see what you will do. They are hoping you will make the choice that creates them, the choice that allows them to exist, the choice that builds the life they are living. Do not abandon your future self. Do not trade their potential for your current comfort. Do not let the tired, scared, uncertain version of yourself make permanent decisions that the strong, capable, realized version of yourself will have to live with. You are being forged right now. The heat you are feeling, the pressure you are under, the difficulty you are facing, this is not evidence that you are on the wrong path. This is evidence that you are being transformed from one thing into another, from potential into actualization, from someone who dreams into someone who achieves, from someone who tries into someone who succeeds. But the forging process requires heat. It requires pressure. It requires you to stay in the fire long enough for the transformation to complete. Most people pull themselves out of the fire too soon. They cannot tolerate the heat. They mistake the necessary discomfort of transformation for unnecessary suffering. They quit right before the metal would have been tempered, right before the transformation would have been complete, right before they would have become the person they need to be to achieve what they want to achieve. Do not be most people. Be the person who stays in the fire. Be the person who tolerates the heat. Be the person who understands that temporary suffering is the price of permanent transformation. Be the person who, when faced with the choice between comfort and growth, chooses growth every time. Be the person who finishes what they start, who keeps their promises to themselves, who does what they said they would do even when they no longer feel like doing it. This is how you build a life worth living. Not through comfort, not through ease, not through taking the path of least resistance, but through discipline, through commitment, through doing hard things when hard things need to be done, through showing up when you do not want to show up, through working when you do not feel like working, through believing in yourself when you have no reason to believe in yourself except that you have decided to. The breakthrough is coming. I cannot tell you when. I cannot tell you how. But I can tell you that it only comes to those who stay long enough to receive it. It only comes to those who persist through the difficult part, who tolerate the uncertainty, who keep working when the work feels pointless. It comes to those who decide that they will not quit, who commit to the path regardless of how long it takes, who understand that the journey itself is what makes them worthy of the destination. You have come so far, you have invested so much. You have sacrificed, struggled, suffered in ways that no one else can see. All of that matters. All of that counts. All of that has been building towards something. Do not waste it now. Do not let all of that effort be for nothing. Do not quit in the final mile of the marathon. Do not give up when you are closer to the finish line than you have ever been. Take the next step. Not because you know it will work. Not because you feel confident. Not because you have evidence that success is coming. Take it because you refuse to be someone who quits. Take it because your character matters more than your comfort. Take it because you made a commitment to yourself and you keep your commitments. Take it because you are building a life and lives are built one step at a time, one decision at a time, one choice at a time. This is your moment. This is your test. This is where you prove to yourself what you are made of. Not in the easy times, not when things are going well, not when success is obvious, but right here, right now, in the difficult, uncertain, scary place where most people turn back. This is where character is revealed. This is where you discover who you really are. Be someone who continues. Be someone who persists. Be someone who refuses to quit. Be someone who, when your children or your grandchildren ask you how you achieved what you achieved, can tell them honestly that you simply refused to stop, that you kept going when it was hard, that you pushed through when it would have been easier to give up, that you became the person you needed to become by refusing to quit when quitting made the most sense. You are one step away from everything you have ever wanted, one decision away, one choice away. That choice is available to you right now, in this moment, in the space between this sentence and whatever you do next. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose yourself and your potential and your future. Choose to continue. The world needs what you are building. The world needs the version of you that refuses to quit. The world needs the example of someone who kept going, who pushed through, who showed that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to give up. Be that person. Be that example. Be someone who matters because they did not quit when it mattered most. You are one step away. Take it now.